Why should everyone be sure to avoid confronting their partner?
Well, confronting anybody is the worst possible idea. Confronting doesn't work. You know, people who get stopped at a traffic light or a traffic cop who stops them on the freeway and they confront him, they end up in jail. Or people who are in a courtroom and they're the defendant or they're a witness and they behave in a certain way that the judge doesn't enjoy, they end up in jail. So I want you to be very, very clear that confrontations are always a bad idea. If you want your marriage back, if you want to turn your marriage around, the very opposite is what you need to do. You need to learn from me how to become a peacemaker. You need to learn from me how to create peace and create joy and create a mood of cooperation. And then you can have your marriage and have your marriage far better than it is today.
That's really exciting, and I know that you've done this a million times, Susan. Now, what do you actually have a woman client do if she is afraid that her husband, her partner, is about to have an affair?
Well, you know, the key is the mind-blowing sex you had on your honeymoon. You've probably let that fall apart or fall off in the subsequent years, because that's the common thing. So you get angry, you stop having sex. Or you get angry and you fight with him and he stops having sex with you. Or any one of a number of these dynamics. But the bottom line is, people rarely have affairs if they're having fabulous sex with their partner, because of the endorphins that come in when you have sex. So you feel happy, you feel joyous, and then you're going to feel good for another 24 hours or 48 hours, depending. So if you have great sex with your husband, that's a huge blessing. Now, I'm not saying if he's a horrible monster that you have great sex. I'm saying if you want the marriage back, if you want to turn the marriage around, and he's a decent guy, then this is a very important thing. This is basically tip number 2. And listen, it doesn't take more than 10 minutes a day for most long-term couples to have sex. I wish it did, but it doesn't.
Thank you for that reality check, Susan. Oh, well, moving forward here, what do you really mean when you say, do what works?
So you have to really be straight with yourself. I remember speaking to a woman who called me some years ago, lived on the East Coast, and she told me that her husband spent no time with her at all. He would never go to parties with her. He would never even include her in the parties he was invited to with his friends and their wives. So that's pretty drastic stuff. And she just felt very, very angry and very, very upset. So I said, well, let's talk about your appearance. You've been married for 20 years. You've got 4 children. You must have gained some weight. So you probably gained about 20-something pounds, right? How do you know? She said to me. How did you even guess? Because we all have, you know, it's like everybody but Gigi has. So she said, well, does that mean that you're saying I should lose weight? I said, I'm saying that you should lose weight yesterday. You know, if there's behaviors that you have that don't meet your husband's needs, and his decision is to exclude you from your whole social life, except for the times when you're going out with your girlfriends, then yeah, you want to start looking as beautiful and desirable as you possibly can. So she lost 20 pounds, and we were working on her attitude. She used to fight and bicker and all that, but she calmed all that down. She stopped all that. And by the time she got to about 20 pounds less, her husband invited her to a party, and he spent the whole evening with his arm around her. Oh. Which was a bonus. That was a bonus I didn't even think would happen that quickly. So it was really cool. Very good.
So there's another example of how you made a big shift in their relationship.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, how difficult is it really to change the mood and the energy in your marriage?
You know, I was just speaking to a client about that today, and I was saying, and she wants her partner to work with me. I said, the way that your partner's going to decide to work with me is only by seeing changes in you. So she's worked with me, I think, about 3 sessions, not much. But she's worked with me for 3 sessions. She understands that she's got to be peaceful. She's got to be loving. She's got to be cooperative. She can't freak out. She can't, pitch a fit. None of that. And the more that she is this relaxed, appreciative, kind, sexy, pretty, hardworking partner, the sooner he's going to really see that she's shifted, that she's evolved. And then he will be very, very willing to learn these skills too.
Oh, that's great. And it's very apparent right away.
That's the trick.
That
10 minutes a day.
Now, why do you actually advise the 10 minutes each day and no more to turn this around and avoid an affair that would destroy a marriage?
Because that's what I think you're willing to do. I think you'd be willing to do something that takes 10 minutes a day, every day, because it's the repetition and the consistency that's really essential. And it's been my experience working with thousands of people all over the world that people are not willing to commit themselves to an hour a day or 30 minutes a day. The very famous quote from a meditation master that I studied with in India, somebody said, "But Guru, I can't meditate for half an hour a day. I have a very busy life. I just can't meditate for a half an hour a day. What should I do?" He said, "Then you, with your busy life, should meditate for 1 hour a day."
There you go.
Isn't that great?
That's perfect.
Yeah. So that's the deal. That's what it's all about here. 10 minutes, I'll accept 10 minutes. I've seen people make amazing, amazing transformations in their lives in 10 minutes a day, every day.
That's a good focus. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And why is, number 2, a sex? What is that in preventing an affair? And what can a wife do about this?
Well, this is a tricky thing. If we're talking about preventing an affair, then you need to up your game. You need to step your game way up. What most people who've been married a long time don't realize is what kind of sex people are having out here in the world, in the real world. People are thinking they've got plenty of time. Oh, they'll show him that they're interested sometime down the road. I just have a client who had 2 dates with the woman, and she was buttoned up and cool. And he said, that's not really what kind of a girlfriend I'm looking for. And I said, then that's not the kind of person you date. And I happen to know a fabulous woman to introduce him to. They had a date, and on the first date, she was very warm, very affectionate, gave him a big kiss. So, that's who she is. That's what he's looking for. That's a potential great match. So women who think that they can wait till he approaches them, or until he makes them feel like they want to, or until he's something or other, you're in for a really horrible awakening. Because right now, about 50% of the women on a first date are having sex with somebody they never met before in sophisticated communities like California, New York, Pennsylvania, Florida. The entire state, Maybe they're not doing it in parts of the Midwest, but the problem is that sophisticated women who know what they want and they're willing to pitch that, so that they have a chance, that's the way the world is working now.
Oh my, that's quite a statistic, Susan. Okay, well, now moving forward, how can a wife get herself in the mood for sex if she is really feeling frightened or sad or angry? How does she go about this in her marriage?
Well, if you're somebody who's moody, then that's your problem. If you're somebody who's happy and warm and loving and peaceful and affectionate, well, we probably wouldn't be having this fear about an affair anyway, right? Because usually women who are happy and cheerful and loving and affectionate and sexy and have great figures and all that, they usually don't have that problem. But that's not 100% true. It isn't 100% true. And as you may have heard me say, Jane Fonda was married 3 times and all 3 husbands cheated on her. So it wasn't because of her appearance. I imagine it was because Jane Fonda was busy with Jane Fonda. And so she didn't have enough time for, Roger or Tom or, her final husband, the head of CNN and the head of all of that, Ted Turner. So the real trick is being interested, being connected, staying connected, being that loving partner. And from that, sex is a natural outgrowth of your loving affection and commitment for your partner. And if it isn't, then we should talk about that, you and I, privately, and we'll see what's going on.
Wouldn't it be great then, the minute your feet hit the floor, foreplay starts? Food for thought.
What a great idea. Or the minute your feet hit the bed, foreplay starts. That sounds a little bit easier.
Okay, well, now I'm going to move on. And so why is number 3, letting your husband know you appreciate him, so valuable?
Well, who wants to be around a partner who isn't grateful? Do you? Now, you may decide that you don't want an affair and your husband has a lot of qualities you don't appreciate, but if you were going to build him in a lab, you wouldn't build a husband who's not appreciative, would you? So that's what we're talking about. If you don't want your husband to have an affair, if you want to turn your marriage around, if you hope that down the road you'll get the appreciation and love and tenderness and caring and supportiveness you desire, you have to start. You have to start by meeting more of his needs, at least for 10 minutes a day. And one of the big ones is letting him know that you're really grateful that you're married to such a wonderful guy. And that goes a long way to make a man want to stick around.
I love that, Susan. Imagine that, focusing on the good of your partner instead of what you want to change or don't like. Very nice.
Exactly.
So, Susan, would you give us an example of gratitude that really works and really could save a marriage?
If you see that your husband's tired, if you see that your husband's having a difficult week, if you know that your husband is going through a difficult time for whatever reason, gratitude would sound like, Bob, I know this has been a really, really difficult week for you. I know that things at the office have been very challenging and that you're doing everything you can to save your job. And I just want you to know how grateful I am to have such a wonderful husband. It means the world to me.
Very nice.
That's a lot less than 10 minutes, too.
Yeah, there you go.
Quick, very quick. 2 minutes, a minute and a half, max.
Practically a one-liner. Very powerful. So therefore, what is the biggest danger of complaining to a spouse or a partner?
The biggest danger is called divorce, because most people don't stick around for that. He may have stayed up to now for whatever reason. But believe me, if you're somebody who's made a habit of complaining and all of that, then he's been giving a lot of thought to leaving. And that is very, very dangerous, because if you've got a guy who's thinking of leaving, and that's a guy who also spends a lot of time with his friends, and if that's a guy who has single friends, and if that's a guy who swivels his head when he's out with his friends, now you've got 4 different reasons to be extremely worried. So the best thing is to make sure that you have what I call a tantric lock in your marriage, where there's no room for a third party. And that's very crucial.
And that's a whole other education that you share with people.
That's right. Thank you.
So now number 4, I know that you told me that teamwork is the basis of any great marriage, and we'd enjoy you explaining how that can turn a marriage in trouble around fast.
Well, a lot of men have big goals, and a lot of women have big goals as well, but we're talking about how to keep your husband from having an affair. So that's why we're focusing on him today. So whatever his goals are, it could be saving money to buy a boat. It could be saving money to move into a bigger house. It could be saving money for any one of 1,000 things, the college fund for the children, whatever it might be. That is a big project. That project needs two people focused on that project. Unless, one of you is making a lot of money, then it wouldn't be a goal. It would be something you'd already have, right? So it's very key to start thinking of that. And when you know that your husband has a goal, one of the things that often happens when the husband is thinking about an affair, or worse, is that his wife is not cooperative and supportive of the goal. So this is a perfect time for you to shift all of that and say, Bob, I just realized you really, really want a boat. I know you've wanted one for the last 2 summers. Could we sit down and talk about what we would have to do to have enough money for you to have a boat this summer? Because I know that's really important. And then we could be together as a family and we'd have so much fun.
Always put it into a positive light.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why are joint goals so crucial in avoiding an affair?
Because if he's got a goal and you don't make it a joint goal, then it's not teamwork. And if you're the one who has talked about goals in the past and made it your goal in the past, and perhaps you've even accomplished whatever that goal was in the past, that was you getting your needs met. That's not only not going to stop him from having an affair, if you do that again, if you pull that card out of the deck again, there's a high probability that's going to speed up his desire and even his actions. So be very careful. This show is about what do you do when the situation is very, very iffy? How do you take a dangerous situation and really, make sure that it doesn't get worse? So be serious about this.
It really matters. Well, Susan, I see that it's time for our clip, and this is on trust and betrayal. Please enjoy. Susan always says if you do 100% of what works and 20% of what doesn't.
0%. 0%. I don't know if Gigi's kidding or if she just misread it. 0% of what doesn't work.
See, she even coaches me. Well, and so with this, you really can, with that 100% focus, have the life that you've always dreamed about. So that's what's extraordinary, that transformation. Boy, I have to really focus on
Because they're
this.
already doing 20%
There
of
you
what doesn't
go.
work, or maybe a little bit more. And it's been devastating, so 0%, please.
There you go. And that's why some of us are where we are at the moment. Now, when people really speak about this betrayal issue, I know that Susan tells me, on what did they base their trust? Oh boy, lots of stories, but on fact or on fiction. So tonight's show will demonstrate, Susan will help us to understand how to create an authentic trust with someone. So that's pretty exciting. We'll get some pointers on this. Take note. I know I need to. Now, I wonder, Susan, if you would really tell us what is, in fact, a true basis concerning trust.
The only way that you can trust someone is if you give that person the freedom to tell you the absolute truth. So if you have children or a child, you have to be willing to hear whatever that child tells you, not whatever it is you want to hear, if your child and you are going to have a relationship based on trust. So if your child knows that he or she will be punished, there's no possibility for trust. That is unfortunate. I know, because many of us were raised in an environment that was all about punishment. And punishment doesn't work. What works is motivating and inspiring somebody based on the truth. So if you already know that you're with somebody who has a tendency to cheat, then there isn't any possibility of trust on that issue because you already know what the habit is. So now you have to talk about breaking a bad habit. And most people who are in relationships with people who have a history of cheating, don't know how to do that, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about tonight.
Thank you. Very realistic. How do we really go about this, making that connection about being honest and truthful and understanding with someone?
Well, again, you have to start by willing to hear whatever your partner tells you. Whatever it is, you have to honestly be willing to hear it. Now, you also can't go into the conversation with a goal in mind, the goal being that the person's going to tell you that they don't cheat, never would cheat, never cheated on anybody, and then you can now marry the person. Because if that's your, if that's your goal and you are seen as somebody with a goal, or what Werner Erhard calls already always thinking, if you're there, then there's no possibility for somebody to really fess up and be honest with you. So that is then not on them, it's on you. So what you have to be able to do is have an honest conversation in which somebody knows it's safe to tell the truth. And my favorite story about what doesn't work, because it's a great story, was my former fiance's parents, and she suspected that he was having an affair because he had a dop kit that she found under the passenger seat of their car. And she thought, like, what's that doing here? Okay, why is he taking that to work? So they're in the car, and she's in the passenger seat, and she pulls it out, and she says, okay, Paul, what's this? And I will not punish you. I will not ask for a divorce. I will not leave you. I will not do any of that. I want you to just tell me the truth. I really need to hear the truth. So Paul, the wonderful guy that he was, said, okay, well, I've got to tell you the truth. The truth is, I have been seeing somebody. And she said, I want a divorce. Don't do that. Don't do that. It isn't worth it. What you want to do is either learn from me, have a private session with me, or learn what we're going to talk about later in the show, but don't do one of those, because you can imagine the kind of divorce they had.
Oh my. Well, that was very informative as usual.
Beware.
Well, Susan, would you please now discuss trust with us?
Well, that's a big one, because it took me about, 40-something years to figure out that I did not understand trust, and most people don't. So as Reagan said, first of all, trust but verify. Lots and lots of people trust because they want to trust, and that's just foolishness. Lots of people want to trust because they don't want to be bothered with verifying. That's nonsense. Lots of people don't trust because they don't trust themselves, but that has nothing to do with the rest of us, So trust is a very, very complicated topic. The bottom line is that I just read something today that was stunning from People or Us Magazine or whatever about Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow, whose marriage ended some time ago, said she doesn't believe in monogamy. She believes in open marriages because open marriages are going to be more successful. So I'm here to tell you they're not. Open marriages have a fraction of success because it's that easy to end it. Because now you're having sex with all these other people, so the opportunity to have another partner, very quick. And there's a lot of very strange stuff going on in swinging communities. And so if you're not someone who wants to do all those different and strange things, that community isn't for you anyway. And if you have an open marriage and it's your husband who wants to have sex with other women and you don't, it's almost impossible for you to be fine 7, 8 times into it when he comes home with a big smile on his face. So try to be practical here. And what I think it's probably telling us about Gwyneth Paltrow is probably that her marriage ended because her husband, the musician, wasn't faithful because of all those groupies coming in and out in a swinging door. And it was probably something that broke her heart. We know that her own parents were together for a long time and there was no hint of any scandal. So it looks like her own hopelessness is what's giving her this idea. So I want you to know, I've worked with lots of people in open marriages, zero success in convincing anybody, once they have the world as their oyster and they can sleep with anybody, that they want to be in a committed, lifelong relationship. Very, very tricky. Whereas in monogamous relationships, lots of them really do work.
Okay, that's perfect, Susan. Oh, I'm in alignment with that.
I'm sure you are.
Now, if you are in fact a stay-at-home mother, should you really go ahead and check in with your husband and discuss what's best financially for your family?
Yeah, you know, one of the big causes of arguments in a marriage is money. You know that. Money and sex are the number one and the number two. And so if you assume that it's perfectly fine that your husband is the single earner because you have young children, then what happens when the youngest child is 9 years old, 8 years old, and you don't see the child? She or he is at school all day long, and then there are after-school activities. So what are you doing all day? I'm working with a client right now. She has a co-parenting arrangement with her former husband. She doesn't work. He gives her lots and lots of spousal and child support. And what is she doing all day? Well, nothing that he can see, nothing that's really contributing to her children either. It's a lot of parties and a lot of socializing. So she doesn't want the marriage back, but it is having a huge toll on the kind of relationship that she has with her former husband, and the whole family is suffering. So checking in financially, offering to do what would work best for the whole family is just common sense.
Very nice. Now, managing your disposition is number 5. How important is your disposition if you really want to stop your husband from having an affair?
Think about it this way. If you have a cleaning lady, or if you were able to have a cleaning lady, would you want to hire somebody who had mood swings, bad attitude, frowning when she came in the morning, grumpy while she did all the cleaning, and grumpy when you paid her at the end of the day? I wouldn't tolerate that. You wouldn't either, Gigi, I'm sure. So think about it that way. Okay, think of any other person that you pay to do anything. Okay, now you're saying to yourself, but I'm the wife, he's not paying me. Really? He actually is. He's actually decided that of all the people he wants to share his success with and share the benefits of his job and his career, that he's decided you're the one. So if you want to stay the one, you really have to be a loving and lovely companion. And I'm reading a biography now of Gregory Peck. His first wife and he used to bicker all the time. She didn't want to do this, she didn't want to do that. She was a very independent person. His second wife, Veronique, who he stayed with for a long, long time, with whom he had a fabulous marriage, she put Greg at the top of the list of what was important, which of course is what I call the to-do list versus the to-don't list. And whenever he was traveling around the world, she would make a home for them wherever it was. And she was a brilliant wife. She understood the Hollywood game, which is not easy. She played it brilliantly. And on top of it, just FYI, she was the beautiful young woman who met him when he was married. And she set her cap for him and decided that he was going to be her husband. And bingo, a couple of years go by and he's her husband. So you really want to figure that out. It's how do you get a great guy? How do you keep a great guy? And a lot of it has to do with a commitment that you make to yourself to make him happy. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm just saying if you don't want your husband to have an affair, this is what works.